Hi everyone, welcome to this video on how disciplines relate to school subjects. So this is the second video in a short series that I'm doing, which really aim to be primers on kind of basics of curriculum theory that I hope will help middle and senior leaders think about the curriculum in their subjects or in subjects that they line manage in a way that helps frame everything else that they're doing within that subject. So in the first session, I talked about what I think is a knowledge-rich curriculum, and the overall message of that was that a knowledge-rich curriculum is not just let's get the textbooks out and lecture students and just tell them loads of stuff. It's a curriculum that aims to be both rigorous and accessible. So it's rigorous insofar as we will see, it connects to the disciplines and gives students a really good preparation to go on and specialize in whatever they choose to do. But it's also accessible insofar as it's not just, okay, you either get it or you don't, you're either clever or you're not. We really work hard to make sure that every student is able to access the knowledge that's been generated by these disciplines. But that begs the question, well, what are these disciplines and how do they relate to the subjects that we teach at school? So what I'm going to try and do is talk through this. You can find something similar in Ruth Ashby's book on the curriculum. She talks about it in terms of Bernstein's theory of recontextualization. I think that maybe overcomplicates it a bit, so I'm just going to tell a kind of simplified story that I hope will be useful. And I'm also going to draw attention to something that I think is often overlooked when we're thinking about this. So what I'm going to do is do a table of school subjects versus disciplines. I'm actually, let me just reveal all of them and then I'll talk through how I think about this. So this is not obviously an exhaustive list of school subjects, but it's kind of a fairly typical set of subjects that most students study at Key Stage 3. And obviously students then go on to specialize and they may go on to do some kind of slightly more specialized subjects when they get to Key Stage 4, like economics or business studies or things like that. But anyway, this is a pretty standard list of subjects that I think most schools tend to study. Now, what we need to think about is, well, okay, how do these subjects relate to the disciplines? And really, we're coming back to this idea of rigor, is by relating the subjects to the disciplines, we are making sure that we are teaching in a rigorous way. So in terms of the school subjects, well, okay, mathematics, that pretty obviously links to the mathematics that you can go and study at university. And how does that develop? Well, it just gets increasingly abstract. And if you know anyone that studied maths at university, you'll know they start to get on some really wild stuff to do with kind of the nature of proof and I don't know, they end up proving things like 1 = 1 and it's all a bit mind-boggling. But anyway, essentially what we are doing in maths is preparing them for a study of mathematics. But it's not just that, because it's also, you could say, well, we're also preparing them to study the natural sciences. Anyone who wants to study the natural sciences at university is going to have to study maths to quite a high level, and the same for the social sciences. Whoops. The same for the social sciences. So I'll draw an arrow there as well. If you want to be, education is a good example. If you want to study education to a serious level, you kind of need to understand statistics. So there's quite a lot in maths which links to all of those. So maths is not just a grounding for mathematics, it's a grounding for lots of other things as well. Now in terms of biology, chemistry and physics, well, we could say the same thing. I mean, less so pure mathematics, but certainly it prepares you for the natural sciences. And it certainly helps prepare you for the methodologies and so on of the social sciences. So we can see here there's some pretty clear links between those main STEM subjects and these ones. I should say the natural sciences, that's obviously biology, chemistry and physics, but also things like geology, materials science, and going even deeper, we start to get these kind of merged ones like geophysics and biochemistry and so on. So that is what I would class as the natural sciences. Social sciences is things like economics, political science, and so on, where we're kind of adopting a scientific method. Sociology would be another one. We're adopting a scientific method to study sort of human relationships and interactions. So then we get to what in school we often call the humanities, so geography. So geography is an interesting one. It kind of straddles a few because in many ways, it's preparation for the natural sciences, so especially geology and things like that. But it's also a really important preparation for economics and other social sciences like that. So actually, geography does a few. History is a really important preparation for the social sciences, but obviously there is its own discipline of history, which history is a preparation for. I think RE is a really interesting one. RE is a study which prepares you to study history. You can't really understand history without understanding something about religions. In a very specialized sense, you could say, well, it's a preparation for theology. I think it's also a really important preparation for English literature, because you can't understand most of English literature, or indeed other languages and culture, without understanding their religions. So I could say the same about art as well. RE actually is a really important preparation for lots of different things. Now, English is a really interesting one. So English, obviously, in really simple terms, if you study English, that's a really good preparation to go on and study English literature at university. It's also going to help you understand other languages and cultures, so I'm going to put that there. And then what I've done here is talk about art or the arts. And perhaps there's a distinction we can make here between what we might call along here. These are the academic disciplines. Languages and culture, they sort of straddle academic and other ones. But anyway, these are what I'd call the academic disciplines. That's everything I've talked about so far. But then there's also what you might call the professional disciplines. So art or the arts, and indeed I would count sport in this case as an art, but these might be professional disciplines. So I'll add a note here, although, yeah, I can see my camera is in the way. But anyway, let's add a note like this, professional disciplines. So these are disciplines that are not found in universities necessarily, but they're still disciplines, they're still organised practices where with kind of rules that people generally follow, loosely follow, and so on. So this is what I will call the professional disciplines down here. And English, you can either go and be an academic scholar in English, or you can go, where are we? Beg your pardon. You can become a poet, or a novelist, or a playwright. So actually, English is a route to the arts as well as a route to one of the academic disciplines. So languages is the same. It's if you study languages, it can bring you into languages and culture. I mean, it's really hard. I don't know what you would classify this as. This, I guess, is just there is an academic discipline around this, but also it's just part of a general education. We'll come back to that idea of a general education later. And you know, it's very similar to English, just in a different language. So it can prepare you to study literature at university, Chinese or French literature or whatever, but it can also prepare you to go and generate new ideas in that language as well. So that might be what we'd call the arts. And then all of these three, I mean, we could do arrows from art, music, drama up to the history one, let's say, and you could study the history of art, or the history of music, and so on. But if you're really thinking of specialising, then you're going to end up in the arts with all three of these. You can end up as a professional actor or musician or artist or sculptor or whatever. And I might even put PE. I'm going to include, this is not a rigorous categorisation, but I'm going to include sport in here as well as one of the arts, just for the sake of argument. But obviously PE also could take you into sports science and something like that. That one kind of sits on its own. Maybe that should go up here in the natural sciences because it's kind of similar to biology and so on. Anyway, this is quite busy, but hopefully what I've talked through helps make sense of these things. The point is, what our school subjects are doing is preparing students to go on and participate in the disciplines. But that's not all. What we've talked about so far is what I would call a specialised education. And I'm going to use a different coloured pen here just to illustrate this. But everything that we've talked about over here, preparing students for participating in the disciplines, this is what I would call a specialised education. I never know whether to spell specialised with an S or a Z, but I'm just going to go with a Z for the time being. So this is what I would call a specialised education. But students don't just study maths so that they can become mathematicians or economists or biochemists or whatever. That's not the only reason. They don't just study English so that they can go and become professors in Shakespeare. They don't just study drama so that they can go and become actors. Actually, the reason we insist that students study all of these things together, and that idea of togetherness is really, really important, is because we think these together form what might be called a general education. Now, the idea behind a general education, it kind of goes back to some very old-fashioned ideas about what was previously called a liberal education. And there's lots and lots to be said about this, which I'm not going to say in this video. I will say in future videos. But I think this is what's often overlooked. We often think about this sort of thing, and I think in Ruth Ashby's book, she draws attention to the way school subjects link to the disciplines, which is really, really important. But she's kind of looking at it from a specialised point of view. Maybe I'll add here specialised education. She's kind of looking from the point of view of specialisation. How do we prepare students for the next steps? But actually, taken together, there's something really, really important about studying all of these different subjects, because that tells us more about who we are as human beings, and it's what allows us to go out into the world and live as kind of well-rounded, dare I say it, happy people. This is a really, really important part of how we educate our students. So when we're thinking about school subjects, it's really, really important that we're thinking about, to make sure our curriculum is rigorous, we're thinking about what is it preparing students for, thinking about how does it help students specialise later on. But what's also really important when we think about the curriculum is how do all of those subjects fit together into an integrated whole, so that when students come out, they have an understanding of how the subjects relate to one another, because that's going to tell them something about themselves, something really, really important to help them go out and live in the world. So that's a brief overview of subjects and disciplines. In the next video, we'll look at it in a little bit more detail at the school subjects and think about how knowledge is organised in each one.